Hey, I'm Luke Ford. I'm here with the author Jim Goad. You can catch him at TachyMad. You can catch him at jimgoad.net. You were recently stirring things up on Jordan Peterson's website. What was going on there, Jim?
Yeah, well, first, Luke, I must say it's quite an honor to be hosted by YouTube's premier trans Jew. Okay, forget that. Yeah, I guess Jordan Peterson, who I can't stand. I think he's beta and weak and not very deep in his thinking. He responded, what's the guy's name? Kafnis? Which I haven't read, so I'm not qualified to speak on his critique of culture of critique. But I went on there, I left a couple of comments, and then I started getting moderated. And then all the responses stopped coming, so I guess I've been shadow banned by Mr. Free Intellectual Inquiry. I can read you the comments
Please.
that got moderated. Bringing it up right now. It's a little okay. I mentioned to somebody, it's like, well, these alt-right trolls are just trying to discredit Mr. Peterson by making him look vile and bad. Hold on, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. You don't know what anyone else is trying to do. Why is this a hard concept for people to fucking grasp? And why does this 95% of what passes for debate online? Well, you're only saying that because you secretly fear that your wife is going to be taken by a buck mandate. It's like, how do you know? They taught us this in journalism class. So the guy asked me what my theory is. I'm like, there's no theory at all here except what they taught me in journalism school. Don't pretend you know what motivates others, because you don't. You never say Dr. Peterson believes. You only say Dr. Peterson says he believes. Appeal to motive is a fallacious non-argument precisely because you can't prove it. It's a dead-end loop. It's not an argument. I can't prove it. And I mean, I guess the only way you could prove it is a polygraph test, and they're not reliable. So people need to steer clear of that everywhere, but they don't. So I just want to hammer that home. It's a futile loop, and so much of what passes for debate these days, I said, I don't know what motivates you. I don't want to know. I just stick to the substance of the argument. Pretending you know what someone is trying to do is not an argument. It's an official fallacy. Peterson is a fraud because he rails against identity politics with the glaring exception of Jewish identity and Zionism. If he had any guts at all, he'd agree to debate Kevin MacDonald, who'd mop the floor with him. All this nonsense about pathological hatred and bigotry, and that's what came out in Peterson's little essay there. It's, the obsessiveness and the bigotry. And these are weasel terms. This is how leftists argue. They go straight to ad hominem. You're a bad person and you're upset, and gaslighting. That's all out of the leftist playbook. With all his talk about ideological totalitarianism, has he ever once criticized the fact that you can go to jail in 16 countries for questioning the official narrative of the Holocaust? Nope. He's controlled opposition. This was considered abominable and moderated and shadow banned. The second thing that got moderated, come on, iMac, bring it up, cough it up. Okay. Somebody said, my examples are weak. I go, your ad hominems are what's weak. I've made my case. He said, these are so-called examples. I'm like, no, they were examples. And he said, and he accused me of bigotry. And I failed to address, and I brought up why Asians and Episcopalians who score equally or superior to Jews on IQ tests, because this is Peterson's, well, they're in positions of power because they have high IQ. Yeah, that's what Kevin MacDonald says too. But that's race realism. That's acknowledging that there are evolutionary inherent differences between groups that evolved under different circumstances. So might not want to go there. Might not even realize where you're going with that. The Asians and Episcopalians who score high, but they're not the media and academic personalities who are on this full-time jihad against whiteness and white supremacy, and who hyperbolically reframe even the mildest criticism of Jewish influence as Nazi talk, until you even attempt to address that issue, because that was the argument. Well, they're in control of the media because they're smart. There are groups that are equally as smart that aren't. Okay, so bad argument. And I got banned for that. Man, I would love to see K-Mac debate him. I think Peterson is extremely weak.
Edgelord writes in the chat room, Jim, when are we seeing you on Internet Blood Sports?
Well, I've watched them. They're great. I think JF is funny. He did a thing where he was watching Jordan Peterson. You know, the thing where Peterson is asked about Solzhenitsyn. He's like, I can't. And he's like, JF is like, what would I do? What would Jesus do? Very funny. It sounded familiar to me. I look back. I did a 2011 article called "Invasion of the Koch-de-Pussies" about these people who made everything about the Koch brothers. If you disagreed with them at all, you were a Koch stooge. It's kind of what's happening now with Russia.
Yeah.
And I said, and that's why I love to argue. I approach it like a blood sport. I may or may not be the first guy to link debating and blood sport. A couple people suggested it to them. I said I'd debate Jordan Peterson on whether evil exists. JF said, yeah, that's great. That's all I've heard. I'll debate anybody. And I'm unlike other people. It's like if they have a good point, I'll be like, oh, fuck, I didn't look at it that way. You're right. I'm an egomaniac, but not that much of an egomaniac.